So based on the registration form, the got about the questions were as follows. To learn about sleep, to improve sleep habits, to understand the causes of sleep problems, and to understand the importance of sleep. Based on these expectations, we've prepared our content, and here is the outline for our session today. I would like to request all of you to keep your audio and, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me just take you through the outline. What is sleep? The functions of sleep. What is good sleep? Sleep-related problems during COVID, and sleep hygiene. Before we begin, I would like to request everyone to keep your audio and videos muted during this session to avoid any disruption. For those who joined in just now, we had shared a code that you can use to interact on different slides of this presentation. Please open Join PD in a browser and enter the code that you see on the screen. If you're unable to, it's okay. You can just follow the presentation that you see on the Google Meet or on YouTube from wherever you have joined. Now let's dive right into our topic for today. What is sleep? You can type your answers in the box for responses in the chat. As you can see, some of you are writing sleep is about brain waves when we are unconscious. That's interesting. All right. So when the body doesn't move, that's correct. Like most of you mentioned, it is essential for our survival, and sleep is usually defined using physiological and biological parameters. It's usually seen in terms of decreased body movement, low responsiveness to the environment or external stimuli, altered breathing and heart rates, changes in brainwave pattern. Sleep is also considered very essential for regulation of different body processes, not just physical, but also psychological functioning and psychological processes. Now let's look at the sleep cycle. As you can see in this diagram, a sleep cycle is approximately 90 minutes in duration. There are different stages of sleep that we go through in each cycle. Each night, we go through about 4 to 5 such sleep cycles on an average. Some of these stages are considered to be very light stages of sleep, while some are deep sleep stages. In each stage, even our brainwave patterns will vary. This is the reason why we feel refreshed or groggy and confused, depending on when we wake up or during which stage of sleep are we woken up. For example, taking a short cat nap or a power nap during the day, as we call it, for about 15 to 20 minutes, can help you feel refreshed. But if you sleep for a longer duration, then you may get into a deeper stage of sleep. And when you wake up suddenly, you will feel lethargic and more confused or less refreshed. Therefore, it is good to be aware of these cycles and try to have a regular sleep routine that is adequate for us. We also need to keep in mind the clock. The body has a set of natural internal processes known as the circadian rhythms. One such rhythm is the sleep-wake cycle. The sleep-wake cycle is dependent on the amount of light in the environment. That is why it is good to have adequate exposure and the natural light in the daytime that we are exposed to. And also to keep in mind that gradually the light should be dimmed or reduced when it is closer to bedtime. Nowadays, screen time of gadgets is interfering with this regulation of the sleep-wake cycle because of the light that we are exposed to. So here's another question, simple question for the participants. How long do you think is the sleep cycle in number of hours? You can type your responses in the box provided. Okay, so you can see the range of responses. Some are saying 6 to 7 hours, some are saying 17. Okay, so the question was about how long is the sleep-wake cycle. Now, this is a circadian rhythm, therefore it will be 24 hours. And what you all are mentioning about 6 to 8 hours is the average time that we sleep. But the wake cycle and sleep cycle together, both the parts together combined, will comprise 24 hours. All right. Now I request Ms. Marianne to take over.
Thank you, ma'am. Like Dr. Rekha mentioned, our sleep-wake cycle is 24 hours long, and this is common among all human beings. However, the times that we experience productivity, there will be individual differences in the period which we experience very high activity and alertness. These individual differences are known as a chronotype, and they are important to understand because they can help us optimize the use of our time. So the productive times would be a good time to decide when we want to participate in various activities such as studying or attending meetings, etc. Now over here you can see a few chronotypes. The best way to explain a chronotype would be, are you a morning person or are you an evening person, right? So some people are better suited to work in the morning, while others are better suited to work in the evening. Breaking it down further, you can divide it into 4: bears, wolves, lions, and dolphins. So you, as I explain each chronotype, you can take the flag and drag it to the one that you think you are. So when we look at bears, which is the top left corner, they follow, their circadian rhythm follows the sun, and they are most productive before noon, and their productivity tends to drop between 2 and 4 p.m. Similarly, when you talk about wolves, they are not morning people at all. They would probably be very grumpy and grouchy until noon, until 12 p.m. And they tend to work when everybody else winds down. So they are what people might call night owls. So they are most productive after 6 p.m. If we look at lions, which is the right bottom corner, they are early morning risers. So they are people who are most productive between 6:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. And they also wind down very early. So they would probably start to feel sleepy around 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. And the last category are dolphins. Now, this is a very small percentage of the population, and they tend to fall on the neurosis spectrum. That means that they tend to be very anxious. They also tend to be the group that experiences a lot of sleep disturbances, because any small change in their sleep environment is likely to wake them up. They're very, very light sleepers. So a little bit of noise or a little bit of light is likely to make them feel very uncomfortable, and they are very likely to wake up. Whereas bears are very, very sound sleepers, and it would take a lot to wake them up. Now, why these chronotypes are important is because they can help us plan our day. So, for example, if you are a bear, it may make more sense as a student, for example, to study before noon, right, when you're most productive. Whereas if you're a wolf, it may make more sense to study at night. Similarly, when it comes to lions, finish your work early in the morning and wind up by 9 to 10. So planning our sleep-wake schedule becomes easier when we understand our chronotype. So let's see what people have answered. Okay, so like most of the population, most of us here are bears, and a few of us identify as dolphins. All right. So moving on to the functions of sleep, this is precisely why sleep is important, and it can be broken down into 3 main primary functions. The first is the function of survival, and here we are talking about restoration and recovery. That is the repletion of the wear and tear during the day. So for example, muscle tear, replenishing our energy, etc., takes place during sleep. It's also the time when our neural pathways become strengthened, and that is what helps in cognitive functioning. So cognitive functioning is basically our information processing, memory, etc., and memory consolidation occurs mainly during sleep. Also, sleep is very important for emotional well-being, because it helps us maintain and regulate our emotions during the day. It also makes us feel less irritable and less angry. Also, studies have shown that when we are deprived of sleep, we we also tend to show less empathy. So sleep also improves our social relationships and our ability to relate to others. And all these functions together improve our quality of life. As we know, quality of life includes social, physical, economic, and other aspects of our life together combined. And sleep helps us in all these respects. In the context of the pandemic, studies have shown that sleep actually improves immune system functioning. So while we are asleep, the body produces a protein called psychotin, responds faster to medication and injection. As mentioned before, sleep also heightens our brain function. It helps with memory consolidation, brain maturation in childhood and adolescence. And it we are in a pandemic and we are experiencing new situations that we may not have experienced before. Sleep can help us be more adaptive to the new situation. And as already mentioned, it also helps maintain emotional stability. It helps us regulate our emotions, reduce feelings of anxiety, depression, and also help us deal with stress better. Now over to Dr. Rekha to explain what good sleep is.
So what is good sleep? Please write your answer in the box provided. Some say feeling rested, when you feel refreshed after waking up, that's good. Not feeling sleepy during the day, okay. Not feeling tired after waking up. Sleeping for long. You feel fresh. So I see that many of you are saying you feel fresh and feel good after a restful sleep without a nightmare. Okay, that is debatable. All right. So can you also tell me how much of sleep does a person need every night? Looks like the range is from 6 to 9 hours, going up to 8. A lot of people are typing on the chat also, between 6 to 8 hours. All right. Okay. Let's look at what is good sleep. So on an average, we need about 7 to 8 hours to feel rejuvenated and feel well rested, like most of you mentioned. But this amount of sleep varies from one person to another. Each person's age, body metabolism, health status, nutrition, the type of activities they indulge in during the day, emotional health, and different habits and such factors will determine the amount of sleep that each person needs. However, it is not just the quantity, but also what we call as the sleep quality, which matters. Therefore, good sleep is determined not just by how much we sleep, that is, how many hours of sleep we get at night, but also by how well rested we feel after we wake up and whether we are able to sleep well through the night. That is, whether we can fall asleep easily, stay asleep for longer duration or the longer part of the night, and also wake up feeling refreshed. While assessing our sleep quality in psychology, we generally use assessments such as the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, as you can see here. We will type the link for this in the chat box for you to do this self-assessment. You can take this, it's a self-report measure, and you can try it later and try to understand in which areas your sleep may be affected and adopt measures accordingly. So as you can see on the screen, it measures these different components of sleep, and knowing which areas might be problematic will help you in planning your routine and taking appropriate measures to sleep better. The following slides will now be explained by Ms. Maria.
All right. So this is primarily why this particular webinar was thought of, describing the sleep-related problems that we are experiencing during COVID. I think some of us might be aware that there is a separate category of sleep disorders. For example, narcolepsy or sleep apnea, but that is not the purview of this webinar. Here we are talking about changes in our sleep or our inability to fall asleep or our tendency to sleep extra that is caused only because of COVID. So here we will be focusing based on the literature and also based on our interaction with students and clients on two main reasons, which is anxiety caused because of COVID and disruption to our schedule caused because of the lockdown, etc. Now, broadly, when we talk about anxiety, anxiety is excessive worry, fear, and apprehension that is usually future-oriented. So this means that we are extremely focused on the future, and generally it is when our future is ambiguous. So right now we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know what our future holds for us. For example, as students, we may be wondering when our exams are going to be, when we're going to graduate, whether the placements we have are going to come through. As working adults, we may be wondering what's going to happen to our jobs or what our salary is going to be like, etc. So there's a lot of stress and pressure on us about what the future holds. And that is why COVID-19 has caused a lot of anxiety in us. These are a few causes of anxiety. You can take the flags and drop them wherever you feel you resonate with the most. I see some of you have already done that. When we talk about experiencing home quarantine or isolation because of COVID, definitely we will be alone. There will also be the added fear of, am I in some way going to hurt my family and friends by being in contact with them? The other aspect is feeling physical distance from others, because many of us are not able to relate to the people around us, and they're not able to be a part of larger social groups, right? So feeling isolated and alone causes a lot of stress on us because we're not able to talk to other people and we're not able to engage the social being aspect of ourselves. When we talk about worrying about the future, as I already gave examples, it's mainly about not being sure what the future holds. And when the future is planned for the future and it's not working out now because of this unforeseen pandemic, it can cause a lot of anxiety, especially for people who like to be in control. So this feeling of anxiety. There is also a preoccupation with the newspaper, right? And you see, okay, these many deaths, these many seem to be coming at the same time, both in India and abroad. And so all this, and we're unable to focus on any particular one thing. It can also feel very overwhelming, and again we can feel a lack of control because we don't know what we can do or how we can do something. The fourth is financial concerns. Again, we are not sure what the job market, what the economy is going to be like post-COVID. Right? So we're not sure how to prepare for the future. For metacognitive factor, which is worry about not sleeping. So when we don't sleep, we then worry about whether we'll be able to sleep the next day. And that in turn makes us feel worried and anxious and keyed up and unable to sleep again. Right? So our worry about not sleeping can also contribute to our inability to sleep, which is more like a vicious cycle. So I see that most of us seem to be feeling isolated and alone, and quite a few of us are worrying about the future. And there is also a preoccupation with the news and worry about not sleeping. And there are also some of us who are experiencing financial concerns. If we go to the consequences of anxiety, like any type of anxiety, it can be broken down into thoughts, feelings, behavior, and bodily changes. Now, as we know, each contributes to the other, or each influences the other. So for example, our thoughts will affect our feelings, behavior, and body. Our feelings will affect our behavior, body, and thoughts, and so on. If we look at our thoughts, some of the common consequences of anxiety during COVID is rumination. So rumination is when the same thought runs through our mind repeatedly and automatically, and this thought is usually negative, like I don't know what's going to happen next, or I should be studying but I'm not. So there's a lot of things that keep running through our mind, and we are unable generally to stop ourselves from thinking the same thought over and over again. When we talk about intrusive thoughts are sudden involuntary thoughts that are usually disturbing. And when we are already in a state of anxiety, past experiences that were also maybe a little disturbing or negative might also creep into our minds, even if it's not related to COVID or anything that's going on in the present. There is also excessive worry, as already mentioned, because of the ambiguity about the future and also update. And also we may feel, because we are isolated, that we have nobody to talk. Small things that maybe would not have caused anxiety in the past may cause a lot of anxiety now. So for example, we may have been able to deal with certain situations, say a friend not responding to us or some relationship trouble, we may have been able to deal with it very calmly. But now, because we are in a state of anxiety, these small things become magnified and may lead to anger outbursts or irritability. When we move to the feelings aspect, there is a feeling of lack of control because we don't know what we can do, we don't know how to plan for the future, and we don't know what the future holds for us. And this can also lead to a feeling of being very overwhelmed. Also, when we don't sleep well, we are, as already explained when we were talking about the functions of sleep, our ability to regulate our emotions becomes lower. So there is a tendency to be very irritable, to have anger outbursts, reacting very, or maybe an exaggerated response to something that is maybe minor or would have been considered minor if we were not in a pandemic. There may also be a lot of sadness, and this generally comes maybe from our family members experiencing COVID or some COVID-related disturbance in their lives, or a disturbance in our own lives. It can also be because we feel like there are these larger issues that we want to help with, but we're unable to. And this also contributes to a feeling of guilt because we feel like we should be doing so many things, but we aren't able to. When we talk about behavior, now generally when we're not able to sleep, we try to distract ourselves, right? And we usually do that by using some technology. So we might say binge watch something on Netflix, or flip through our phones, or go on social media. But the thing is that these distraction techniques actually contribute to our sleep deprivation, because as Dr. Rekha, ability to go to work or to study or to go to college, right? So all our work is happening in the same space. We are working, we are relaxing, and we are sleeping probably in the same place, sometimes utilization of space. When we talk about utilization of space, what I mean is that we may be using the bedroom or even the bed to do all activities, to relax and watch things on our laptop, to study, and to sleep, right? There is also this tendency to feel like because I'm working at home, I need I'm so sorry, there was a problem with the YouTube link. As I was saying, when we consume news, we need to consume it from credible sources. Okay, so everything need not be taken at face value. The other thing is, it might be helpful for us to express our anxiety in creative ways while we are awake, so that they do not recur and disturb us when we are about to sleep. Okay, so this could include very simple things like maintaining a journal, or if we like to paint, we could paint, draw, maybe even sing a song or do something that allows us to express our anxiety while we are awake, so that when we are ready to go to bed, it doesn't come back to trouble us then. As mentioned before, we are social beings, so it's also important to schedule in time with others. It makes us feel less isolated and less alone. While we cannot spend physical time with each other, there are so many ways. For example, even this webinar, we are able to do so on Google Meet and on YouTube, right? So we are able to find ways to connect with one another and interact with one another. And it's important to schedule in this time as well. So it's not just about work and sleep. We need to also include other aspects of ourselves into our schedules. One common way that we generally think we can stop ourselves from feeling anxious, especially the thought aspect, right? Our rumination and intrusive thoughts, is through thought suppression. So thought suppression is when we try to consciously remove a thought from our mind, right? And this generally doesn't work. So let's try it. Look at this pink elephant. Right? Now, try not to think about this pink elephant. Remove it from your mind. Do not think about this pink elephant. How successful were you? Now mark yourselves. How successful were you on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being I was not at all successful and the pink elephant kept coming in my mind. And 10 being I was very successful and I didn't think about this pink elephant at all. Okay, some of us seem to be very good at thought suppression. They've given themselves an 8. And most of us fall between 1 and 5. Right? So what this exercise shows is that thought suppression actually doesn't work for most of us, right? The more we try not to think about something, the more likely it is that we will think about it. So it's sometimes easier to allow the thought to enter in our mind and leave, rather than try to consciously stop ourselves from thinking about it. When we talk about disruption to our schedule, the obvious answer to that is to fix our schedule, right? But when we are fixing our schedule, we need to make sure that we include all aspects of our lives: work, play, and social engagements. So we can plan it on an hourly basis or a weekly basis, depending on whatever suits you. And when we are fixing our schedule, what we're doing is we are making a routine. So we make a schedule based on our chronotype, right? So we try to do, if we can, and our work timings are flexible, we try to schedule, say, our meetings, or as therapists are seeing clients, our sessions, or as students studying, etc. We try to make a schedule in such a way that we can make the most of our productive time and try to wind up when we are most likely to fall asleep. So for example, a wolf, it may not make sense for you to try and go to sleep at 10 p.m. because you are somebody who is more productive in the night. So if you don't have any work commitments, etc., it might make more sense for you to stop at, say, 11 in the night, 12 in the night even, and sleep longer in the daytime, because anyway, you are not productive until noon. Bears generally don't have much of a problem. But if you take lions, it may make more sense for you to sleep early and wake up early and finish work, rather than trying to push yourself to work even during the night when you're not your most productive. So making a schedule based on your chronotype will help you make the most of your productive time, and it will also increase the likelihood of you getting a good night's sleep. Now that we are in the pandemic, it's also important to ensure that we go to sleep and wake up at fixed times on all days. Why I say this is because a lot of us have this practice of sleeping in on the weekends when we don't have work. And that may have been okay for our schedule when everything was the way it normally is. However, now when we are experiencing disruptions in our schedule, we need to sort of train ourselves and adapt our sleep wake cycle. So at least until it comes back to normal and we're able to get a good night's sleep, it may be more beneficial to sleep and wake up at fixed times on all days. Because what happens is, say for example, you say, okay, today is Sunday, I'm going to sleep till 11 a.m. and then maybe I'm going to take a nap in the afternoon, right? So now we do that, and then in the night we can't sleep. We'll sleep at say 1, 2 in the morning. Then when we wake up, we're going to experience daytime sleepiness because we have to wake up at a particular time on Monday to work or to attend classes. And then again, we're experiencing daytime sleepiness, we're grouchy, and again, our sleep cycle is disrupted. So that's why until our sleep cycle goes back to normal and functions at a normal pace, it may be more helpful to sleep and wake at fixed times on all days. Receiving natural light and also exercising in the daytime might also help increase our physical activity and our exposure to sunlight, which again will help regulate our sleep-wake cycle. The other thing is that a lot of us tend to try and be as productive as we were in the past before the pandemic. And this may not be a very wise way to function because we are in a pandemic and this is a different type of normal. So trying to do small activities at a time might actually be more beneficial than trying to do many things at one time, even if we were able to do that before. The other aspect of fixing our schedule is to create a work-life boundary. So setting a schedule for yourself will also be able to tell you, okay, I'm going to work from this time to this time, and then after that, I'm going to stop. So even though we're working, having fun, and sleeping in the same space, it need not mean that we become workaholics and work from sunrise to sunset. One way of trying to create a routine and trying to create work-life boundaries is simply by changing your clothes, right? So you change your clothes before you go to sleep and you change your clothes after you wake up. So this gives you a feeling of normalcy, because I don't think we would be working in our sleep clothes if we were to leave our house. And the other thing is because it gives us a clear demarcation in our mind that and now I've changed my clothes, this is my time for work, and now I've changed my clothes again, this is my time to relax and go to sleep. Another thing is, again, working during breaks. So generally when we go out to work, we may have a fixed lunchtime, we may even have time for a coffee break, right? But when we work at home, we may be eating and working at the same time. We don't really take many breaks. And this can be actually detrimental in the long term. So even though we may seem very productive now, it actually puts a lot of strain on us in the long term and can affect our sleep schedule. So it may be more helpful to schedule regular breaks, especially breaks for meals. So while eating, it's better to shut off everything and have lunch, maybe talk to the people around you rather than work while eating. Another thing that might help us is to avoid sitting or lying on the bed when you're not going to go to sleep, and also to create a separate workspace if possible. Right? So what happens here is, from a psychological perspective, this is using the principles of classical conditioning. If we use our bedroom only for sleeping, eventually we will associate the bed and the bedroom only with sleeping and not with any other activity that we might do when we are alert and active. So the minute we see the bed after some time, we will immediately associate it with sleeping and will start to feel sleepy. Of course, this requires constant practice, but it would be helpful if we are able to separate our work life from our recreational and relaxed life. So the other aspect is to create a balanced schedule. There needs to be time for work, yes, but also for recreation and social engagements. Feeling that we have to work all the time can sometimes be detrimental, and it will also stop us from winding down. Another aspect of our sleep schedule, when we talk about a balanced schedule, is, say you do want to schedule a time that you're going to sleep, it might be helpful if you schedule the time you need to start your sleep behaviors, or sleep routine. What I mean by this is, you have to, say, brush your teeth, change your clothes, you might want to wash your face, or maybe even take a
mentioned earlier, and also following certain sleep hygiene practices that may be helpful to us. General sleep hygiene practices include self-care and lifestyle changes. These changes are related primarily to our diet, our sleep environment, and our body environment. Thank you. Now we will open up this discussion, and I hope that it was a fruitful time discussing some of the key points related to sleep hygiene. You can post your questions in the box here, or you can type in the chat. We will try to take the questions that are relevant for all and comment to all. Please do not unmute your audio and speak, as it may cause disruption with a huge number of people here. So please only type it in the chat box or on the Join PD response box. Thank you. Some of you are saying it is useful. I hope it was. That was the aim. Okay, so I can see one question here. You said the circadian rhythm is highly affected by light. Now, there are different hormones and different changes that happen in the body based on the amount of light we are exposed to. And that is why you will find it difficult to fall asleep when the surroundings are very bright, because the brain feels like it is daytime and it has to regulate the brain processes and the body accordingly. So it would be good to have adequate exposure to the light so that it will regulate and create a balanced sleep wake cycle. Staying in an entirely dark surroundings for long durations of time can trick the brain to think it is night time, and it won't have enough sufficient input from the environment to regulate. Also, there are things like melatonin and all, which aid better sleep wake cycles. Now, some of you are asking here a related question: is melatonin supplements good in light dosages? I know that there are people who take melatonin supplements or even small.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, what about insomnia? Now, insomnia is a condition where you have interrupted sleep. Either you have difficulty falling asleep or you have difficulty staying asleep. That means you fall asleep and then wake up very quickly, or you wake up too early before you feel rested enough. Now, if children are having these complaints of sleeplessness and all that, it is good to get them checked for various health conditions that could be causing it, or any kind of emotional overwhelm that they might be facing. Normally, children sleep more than adults because that is the way the body requires time. And you would see that as we grow older, gradually our need for sleep decreases. So, if children complain of such things, there could be either an emotional issue or something within the body that can be causing it. We would recommend you get it checked, and we would not be able to comment just like that generally on this issue.
If I could interject here,
Yeah.
if the child is an adolescent, again, it's related somewhat to melatonin, because some studies have shown that adolescents tend to secrete melatonin a lot later than they did when they were in early and late childhood, and they need to sleep longer in the daytime. But what happens generally is that they have to get up early to go to school, etc. So it could be a biological aspect as well, that children tend to sleep later as they grow older. So yeah, that could also be one of the reasons.
Okay. Another question here on YouTube is it true that stressed people sleep longer? Um, well, it can be yes and can be no. Definitely, sleep is affected because of stress. There are different things, like some of our earlier slides also, Marianne had mentioned about cortisol, the stress hormone, which is secreted whenever we are in a state of anxiety or any state of overwhelm. Now, there are some people who sleep as a reaction or as a defense to stressful situations. It makes them feel better, or it's their way of shutting out any other stimuli and difficult experiences. So they tend to feel more sleepy. Also because of the emotional energy that is consumed by the body when we are stressed. Say for example, when you feel fear, you automatically start feeling dizzy, or the body starts consuming more energy in terms of faster breath, and the calorie burns and other things will speed up. That is to help the body provide that much energy to cope up. So when we have emotional or stressful situations, it can make one very emotionally exhausted. Even for students on this group, you might feel that during exams are the time when you feel more sleepy. uh, it may be, contrary to otherwise. You might think, oh, only during exams when I want to sit up and study I am feeling so tired, but that's because so much of your energy and resources are consumed by you learning and focusing on certain things. Likewise for so many thoughts and anxiety that we face. So stressed people can sleep longer, but sometimes because of that stress it can keep the person awake because they are constantly stimulated and they won't be able to rest. So it can go both ways. There's another question. Sometimes I feel sleepy, but once I close my eyes, the brain still keeps thinking. How do I overcome this? I think I just mentioned that um, in relation to the previous question. And maybe Marianne can share something about how we try not to think of the pink elephant in the slide that you mentioned. How do I close my eyes and stop thinking?
Right. So one way to do that would be, as Rekha suggested, to use positive affirmations to substitute these negative thoughts. Another thing is, if you keep trying, like we did with the pink elephant experiment, if we keep trying to push these thoughts out of our mind, they're just going to keep surfacing. So it might be helpful to practice something called mindfulness. This is very similar to meditation, where you just allow thoughts to come into your mind and go away naturally, and you will find that it will slowly decrease on its own. You could also use, as Rekha suggested, lavender oil, etc., which tends to calm us down bodily. So as the slide on anxiety showed, we can try to calm ourselves down and calm our thoughts down by accessing our body, behavior, or feelings, since they're all interconnected. So using things like lavender oil, or as somebody was asking about diet, right? Eating bananas just before going to sleep, or having a warm shower. Also making sure we feel cozy, and making sure that we're not using any technology, etc. That can actually help us as well. If the problem is anxiety and you feel like it's very, very high, it might also be helpful to consult a mental health professional, and dealing with those challenges related to anxiety, which may not really be related to sleep specifically, that can also reduce these thoughts coming in our mind.
Yeah, I think likewise, adding on to what she said, um, say if you're thinking a lot and you're unable to stop those thoughts, another kind of method what we suggest, which I probably didn't mention, is writing down those thoughts and worries. We sometimes call it as an emotional dump. So anything that is really bothering you, you put it aside on, in a paper, or speak it out, or keep it aside. Tell yourself that for now I will write this out instead of storing it in my head, and keep it aside till I sleep and wake up. So even if it's for a shorter duration, you can slowly train your mind. And using positive affirmations like I'm going to feel better, or I'm sleeping better, or gradually it will improve, that will motivate you. However, it may not be the only solution. You may have to try out additional supportive measures. Okay, the next one says, what causes snoring and why is sleeplessness even though the body is tired, and sleeplessness even though the body is tired and feels sleepy? Okay, two questions here. Why do we feel tired and yet we feel sleeplessness? It could vary. Sometimes, like I told you, doing too much of work also can make you very highly stimulated. So all areas of the brain are engaged, body has been moving so much. So for you to calm down and get into a relaxed mode, it's like the engine has been running the whole day and now it is heated or something, and you will have to wait for it to cool down, and then in a way, after you have switched off, then it cools down, then probably it reaches back to that state of balance. So that could be a reason why. And snoring relates to various things like the airway, and how there are different even sleep conditions like sleep apnea and all that. You can read more about it, where there are interruptions because of the way the air passes through when we are sleeping, and deep breathing especially. Would you like to add on something, Marianne?
Yeah, as Rekha mentioned, the reason for snoring is usually a physical problem. So it could be congestion, for example, when we have a cold or some respiratory problem, something that's blocking the nasal tract. Sometimes people who are overweight may also experience sleep apnea, which is one symptom is snoring. So that could also be one of the reasons for snoring.
Okay, one of our students, Abdul, is asking, can emotions affect our sleep? Yes, definitely. Just think of any day when you were super excited about something that was going to happen the next day, or you received a really good news. How would you feel that day? Would you be able to rest well, or would you be all excited and hyper? And the body is also aroused in that manner. So the sleep may be limited, and it won't bother you much because you're in a happy state of mind. When it does bother us is when we are in a negative state, or we are upset emotionally, something negative is bothering us. It tends to play on our minds more, that, oh, now my sleep is also affected, I want to sleep, I want to escape this aspect, and I'm not able to. So both ways, whether good or bad emotions, they cause a host of changes in the body, and that can keep us in a state of arousal, which goes against the need for us to relax and be calm when it is time to sleep. So keep in mind that anything in moderation and anything regulated is an ideal state.
There's a question in the chat where it says people tend to use an app on their phone for guided meditation so that they can go to sleep. So is that bad for sleep hygiene because they're still using a form of technology and interacting with it? Do you want to take that, Rekha?
The question is it bad for to be used?
Yeah.
Well, not bad to be used. Now, each of us have a different way of, learning associations. Like when we spoke about the environmental settings, or, Marianne was sharing, have a separate space. If you're always associating your bed with, work or with leisure, or, you're just moving around in the same clothes that you were doing other work with. So many factors like that. Now, if you're using something like a meditation app or some relaxing music to help yourself fall asleep, it may be good if it works well for you. And this in no way is causing any biological changes to the body. Now, when we said sleeping pills and other drugs or medications that you take, see, normally, even when people cannot sleep well, they may resort to using certain substances, thinking that it will put them to sleep. But you will notice they will wake up quickly after. It may be for that temporary moment. So, there, the biology of the body is getting affected. But these apps, if they're helping you get into a relaxed state, it may be helpful and doesn't have any side effects. The other thing is listening to music of a certain frequency, or even certain meditative chants and mantras that people use. It changes the brainwave pattern. And if you're very focused and advanced in your meditation practice, you will notice that. And there are studies, where people's brainwave patterns have been mapped. They match a very relaxed and a very calm state. So if the app is helping you and it's not causing any other interference, I would say go ahead. It's not a bad thing as long as you're able to regulate with the help of something, or just on your own.
Yeah, and also to continue from what Rekha is saying, I think also this Raga is asking, because we're using technology, will it affect us? So basically, when we use guided meditation apps, I'm assuming we are going to be listening to something and not really looking at our screen. So our phone will be next to us. So it's not that the blue light is going to be in our faces while we are doing the guided meditation. So that aspect of the technological device, which is going to negatively affect our sleep, is also negated in that sense.
Yeah. There's another one. Students get affected by their academic work. What do you suggest for students? I think a majority of our participants here could be the student population. I think what you should keep in mind, whether it is any kind of work, academic or otherwise, anything that does not be all consuming for you, you're not too overwhelmed and too anxious. and you have sufficient time to take breaks and relax and not feel like stressed because of it, that will be a good long-term strategy. And some of the other things, like making a fixed schedule, though we say it's important for your sleep, but just being more organized in the day and setting aside time and saying, okay, for half an hour I'll do this work, or for 1 hour I'll do something else, because often we are juggling between different subjects and different coursework. So keeping a time and following that schedule will, over a period of time, help you out. So that's something that underlies all other measures. If you have a good routine and a schedule, you will feel more sorted, organized, you will plan better, and you will execute better. Therefore, you will not have much stress or overwhelm. Because even in psychology, we say stress is when we feel too many demands are made on us. And that is what causes so many other things like anxiousness and, feeling moody about it, or disruption in our sleep and appetite and all of that. So maintain it by minimizing any stressful situations, and it'll go in the long run as a useful strategy.
There's a question on why women tend to feel more tired during their menstruation. So to answer that, it is normal to experience some level of tiredness because there will be a drop in estrogen levels during your menstrual cycle, and our energy levels are generally low. But it could also be an underlying problem of some iron deficiency or something like that. So if you feel like it's extreme and you can't sleep, I mean, you are extremely sleepy and can't function at all, it may be helpful to go and meet with a gynecologist or some medical professional who will be able to help you better.
Yeah. Okay, there's another question here. Can insufficient sleep or undergoing sleep problems affect the menstrual cycle? I guess it's related to your question. So if you want to sum that up, maybe. Can insufficient sleep affect our menstrual cycle?
If the insufficient sleep is a symptom of anxiety, then yes, it can affect our menstrual cycle. Especially in the pandemic, some of us may have experienced, not having our period on time or not getting our period for a prolonged period of time, and that's mainly because of stress. So sometimes when our insomnia is part of larger anxiety and stress, then yes, it will also affect such things as our menstrual cycle.
Yeah, and I think it's also that these are all bodily processes. All are governed by certain hormonal changes. One increase in a certain hormone can disrupt something else or suppress some other function. And there are several such intricate procedures, neurochemical changes, which will cause a long-term or short-term disruption. And therefore, like we keep emphasizing, maintaining good health, maintaining a moderate and balanced lifestyle and diet and other factors, adequate exercise. So it may not just be sleep, it can be a combination of all these things. And you should try and identify, when you find that your menstrual health is being affected. Maybe you'll have more pain, or you will have changes in the flow due to lack of sleep, or days when you've been really stressed and not sleeping enough, you will notice some changes. So be mindful of your body clock and take measures accordingly. There's another one on, can we sleep 3 to 4 hours and still feel refreshed, as suggested by some spiritual gurus? So I don't know which are the spiritual gurus and in what context they may have said that, but it really depends on the body. And I told you various factors that we've been mentioning in the webinar. So I guess there's no need to deliberate on this more. Do you have another question, or shall I take the next?
You can go ahead.
Okay. Why does having regular dreams or nightmares make us feel tired? If you think of the experience when you have a nightmare, your body is sometimes almost moving, like you're running somewhere, or you start sweating, you're breathing hard. There are so many changes. Now just think of what happens when we are going through these emotions. There's so much of energy being consumed by the body. And also when fear and pain and other difficult situations, stressful situations happen, even in regular life, one may just faint due to the exhaustion and overwhelm. So the same thing might happen in nightmares because they are negative in content. They are very, heavy for us to deal with. And if it's recurrent, then there's already a conditioning that, okay, if I'm going to sleep, I might have the nightmare again. So all these factors will complicate the process and lead you to feel tired, and yet you'll be woken up at regular intervals or more often. Then
there's a question about experiencing or remembering your parents while asleep. So this could be an aspect of grief, I would say. And it's perfectly natural since you seem to have lost them recently. And I think as we process our grief, these kind of, if it's a negative experience for you, then it would decrease. But if it's a positive experience and you feel like being able to spend time with them in this way is helping you, then I guess it should be okay for you. Do you want to add anything, Rekha?
No, I think you've summarized it well. There's another question here on why do we dream, and is it good? It is a good sign that we are sleeping well. Well, dreams, why do we dream? There are many theories of why do we dream. Sometimes they say that the brain is processing different memories and experiences. Sometimes they say it's an unconscious process and various things. So if you look at your dreams, sometimes they can be bizarre, or they can be a combination of everyday events versus something that totally doesn't make sense. So there are many theories, and we don't have the time or scope to get into it in this webinar. But I will answer whether dreams are a good sign of sleep or not. Not really, because there are people who might not remember their dreams at all, or they may report that they've never had a dream, which is not an indicator of the sleep quality or the amount of sleep. We have about 5 minutes more, so maybe we'll just skim through some of the common ones and then move towards concluding the webinar. If there are more questions, definitely you could write to us, or we'll be happy to help you out with some of your queries on email as well. And we'll keep you posted about further newer topics which may be related to your concerns or queries. For now, we just skim through some more.
A common question is relating to sleep disturbances. We haven't really gone into sleep disorders because that wasn't really the focus of our webinar. But yes, there are various sleep disorders. Some of them are biologically caused, and some of them can be caused by stress. Quite a few questions on Pear Deck as well as in the YouTube chat are about sleep talking and sleepwalking, and we generally show these kind of behaviors when we are extremely stressed and our body which usually stops moving, etc. As somebody said when we asked what is sleep, that mechanism doesn't work. So some sleep disturbances can actually be caused by stress and anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's another one here. Is it okay to sleep late between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. and wake up late between 9 and 11 a.m. over several months, especially for night persons? Go ahead, Miriam.
If you feel like your chronotype is, say, a wolf, and you feel like you are very productive towards the evening and you have a schedule that allows you to do that, then I would say go ahead. But if you do have a fixed schedule, like say if you are a student, I don't think like once you start going to, I mean, eventually once the pandemic is over and we start returning to class, or we start returning to work and we have a 9 to 5 schedule, I wouldn't recommend adopting that kind of strategy now, because eventually we would have to break it, and that can be very, very difficult. It's similar to how, you know, you may sleep during the summer holidays, and then when class starts, you find the first few weeks really hard. So it really depends on what type of schedule you think you will have in the future as well. Because if you are a night person and you're, say, working from home anyway, or say you have a private practice as a therapist, then yes, you can go ahead and schedule your clients towards the evening if you feel like, you know, you're more productive then. But if you feel like you are going to have a fixed schedule from 9 to 5, then it would be easier for you to maintain this type of a schedule so that later on it's not hard to switch.
Okay, there's another one here. Does reading before sleep time support sleeping? Is it a myth or a fact? Please clarify. So I think it's not really a myth or a fact. It really depends on what you're reading and how it makes you feel. Supposing you're reading something like high drama and suspense and thriller type of content, and it makes you all anxious, or it triggers off certain memories in you, which arouses you to a state where you can't be calm and relaxed, then it may interfere. If not, it can be considered as a relaxing activity, because many people use it to unwind from the day's constant work and juggling between different things. It may work for you if you're the type who feels good by reading. So any activity that makes you feel calm, instead of now getting up and starting an exercise or jogging before you sleep, anything that helps you calm down would be a good thing, including reading. um, Anything else from your end, Miriam?
There are a few questions about nightmares and how they affect us when we are awake. Yes, sometimes it can be very frightening, and first of all, it may wake us up during our sleep time, and then it could also haunt us later on. If you feel like this is a recurring nightmare, then maybe it should be something you address with a mental health professional, or on your own, maybe expressing it, as was mentioned, expressing it creatively. So drawing it out or writing about it can sometimes be cathartic, like we've released that kind of negative emotion. But if you feel like it's happening just once in a while, then I think it's all right. Sometimes, say, like we watch some murder mystery thing, or we read a very scary book or something, that could also cause us to have a nightmare, but that will just be situational. So if it's just happening rarely, I would say it's not a cause for worry. Do you want to add anything, Rekha?
No, I think that's a good response. We also have many questions coming up on sleep disorders, sleep paralysis. I guess that's a whole topic on its own, and we may not be able to say much. But yes, there are people who have such disorders, mostly neurological related problems or disruptions. And it is a real thing. And with the right kind of support and treatment, medications, and behavioral interventions, it can be overcome or managed. Then there's one here on how to rectify problems for who don't have proper sleep during the night. Just follow some of the sleep hygiene practices we were suggesting to you. Maintain a routine. So it's important to be consistent. Many of us will try several things every day and try to see what works well. It may not work well, because every day you're confusing your body with different types of activities and affirmations, or a different routine. So try to be consistent, say at least for 2 to 3 weeks, and you will see results just with simple things that help you. So I think that's it from my end. If you want to take a few more, and we can conclude.
Sure. There are a
Sorry
lot.
for the interruption, ma'am. There's a question actually. Tell me about the sleep to have a quality good sleep every day. And what is the difference between a man sleeping for a longer time and a woman? How much required sleep is required? Please, can I answer? Can I get the answer for this, please?
Yeah, sure. You can just mute the audio so that it doesn't interfere with the sound here. It is echoing otherwise. You want to answer it, Marian?
Yeah, I think we discussed that when we were talking about what is a good sleep. So I would recommend between 8.5 to 9.5 hours. And as per my knowledge, I don't think there's any difference between what a male requires and what a female requires. I think it's more based on the type of physical activity that you do, and just generally how much sleep you require based on your chronotype. And in relation to chronotype, I see a lot of questions. So I didn't really go into it much because of paucity of time. But there is this Power of When quiz, which I've put in the chat. And maybe when we're sending the feedback form, I'll send that link as well. So if anybody's interested, you can take this quiz. It was developed by a sleep specialist called Michael Bruce. And he will also explain to you how to modify your routine based on what type of chronotype you get. So it will be helpful for you if you want to see what type of sleep-wake schedule you should follow. And he also explains in great detail about the sleep-wake cycle, etc. So that could be something that's helpful if we're interested in learning more about chronotypes.
Okay, and just adding on to the previous question, men and women, due to certain bodily changes, like if the women are undergoing their menstrual cycle or childbirth or certain other conditions due to hormones and all that being a little different, maybe there are minor changes, but there's nothing so significant that we can say there's a great difference between men and women. All right. So I think we have tried to cover more or less the questions that are relating to one of the clusters. Mostly we got questions from sleep disorders, the different types of sleep, the amount of sleep, sleep hygiene practices, dreams, nightmares, and different activities that are related to our usual routine, like reading or exercising and other things. There might be some more questions which we may not have answered. We will try our best to respond to you, and you can certainly write to us at the email that is provided here on the screen. You can write to us with your queries, and in the feedback, you will also have scope to suggest if you want different topics to be covered in upcoming webinars. So please note down this email ID. Now, I would like to formally conclude this webinar with a vote of thanks. On behalf of my department, I want to acknowledge and thank the management of St. Joseph's Evening College, our director, Father Brian Pereira, SJ, our principal, Dr. Albert Joseph Smith, Vice Principal, Dr. Priya, and all our colleagues for their constant encouragement and support towards all our endeavors in the department. I'm also very grateful to Ms. Mary Ann Pies for her enthusiastic and efficient work towards materializing this webinar, and also for facilitating the seminar, this session today. I must mention Father Brian once again, because he provides us a lot of direction and timely inputs as a member of our department, and he's constantly motivating us to do more in the spirit of magis, as we would say in the Jesuit philosophy. I also want to thank our student volunteers. I will not name all of them, but there are so many of them here today, like Rohit, Noel, Sindhu, Delia, Saideep, Ria, and many more whom please pardon me for not mentioning, but you have all really worked hard to ensure it's smoothly conducted. And this being the first time we are doing a webinar, it was immensely helpful to have your support. We also thank all our colleagues, our well-wishers and friends, along with the participants who have joined us today for this session, and for being excellent in your interactions, in your feedback, and for kindly cooperating with us if there were any glitches on our part due to technological reasons. And certificates, next thing, will be sent by email to all the registered participants, and you will also have a feedback form along with it. Please fill that in and send it back to us so that we can verify your email and your understanding of this webinar. Please also check if you have been receiving the email updates from us, because some of your emails were bouncing back when we sent out emails. Some of you have joined the WhatsApp group, so we will update you and we will notify you when we send the certificate. Please give us about 6 to 7 working days, that is within a week. We will try to send it out to you. As you saw that the turnout was quite huge, and for us to verify everything and send you the right document, we need a little time. We will notify you on WhatsApp, and then you can leave the group, or you could just write back to us at the ID that we showed you earlier to check for your certificate. In the future, we hope to pursue a continued association with all of you, and we will send you details on any updates regarding events or future seminars, webinars that we might conduct. And please ensure you fill up your feedback form and write back for anything that you may have queries on. For those of you who are looking to pursue your education during the evening, I would like to direct you to our college website, which is www.stec.edu.in. You can check the website for various courses, UG, PG. We have twinning programs, and we also have diploma courses if you are interested. It's mainly aimed at students and people who work or have other engagements during the day but want to simultaneously complete their education and update their skills. So please have a look.